A couple weeks ago, my son came up to me and he gave me a riddle. And this riddle, I have to confess, totally stumped me. And so I thought I'd share that today to see if you guys can figure out this riddle, okay? Now, just to let you know, the first one who can text me and solve the riddle in each service, I will give you $30 cash. No questions asked, other than the fact of you have to use that $30 to pay it forward, to use that for something good other than just for yourself to go buy yourself a nice meal or whatever, okay? So write this down if you want to be a part of it, if you want $30. My number is 630-303-2300. 630-303-2300. You can text me. The first one who texts me the solution to this riddle, and it's correct, will get $30. And I have to confess, I still haven't solved this problem, okay? For 30 minutes, I was like, okay, maybe it's this, and maybe it's this, but I could not figure it out, so maybe you will figure it out. You're smarter than me, okay? So this is how the riddle goes. Three friends, they come into a restaurant. They're very hungry, and they each order a meal. They get their meal. They finish it off. They enjoy the meal. The waiter comes after the meal, wipes their table clean, and brings them the check. And the check comes to $30 even. Okay? It never happens like that, but let's just say $30 even, taxes included, it's $30. And the friends look at each other and they say, hey, this is an easy way, let's just split it 3 ways evenly. So each friend gets out $10, puts $10 on the table, together it's $30. They give it to the waiter goes back and starts doing his thing. And at the same time, the waiter is working through this $30 to clear them out. The manager comes by to the waiter and says, hey, you didn't give them the discount that they were supposed to get. It was actually supposed to be $5 off. You're going to need to knock $5 off that bill. So you need to give them $5 back. And so the waiter says, okay. So he gets $5, 5 ones, and he starts to go back to the table. And as he's going back to the table, he's thinking in his mind, wait a minute, I have to figure out how to give $5 back to them evenly. I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to pocket $2. And then I'm going to give them $3. It'll be easy because now they can get $1 each person. And so that's what he does. He pockets $2. I didn't say he was an honest waiter. He pockets $2, and then he takes the other $3 and gives them back. Each person takes $1 back. Okay, everybody's happy. So here's the riddle. If each person initially gave $10, they got $1 back. How much did each person spend? $9, right? This isn't the tough part, okay? How much did each person spend? $9. Okay, you guys are awake, I think, a little bit. So each person paid $9. 9 times 3 is 27. There we go. And then $27. So now you have $27 that they paid. The waiter has how much? $2. 27 plus 2 is? Where did the other dollar go? And that totally stumped me. Like, I still cannot figure out where that other dollar went. It's not so easy making change when you are forced to. Well, this morning we're going to start a new series called Making Change, and it's all about finances and money. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. The temptation is for some of you to say, oh man, he's talking about money for the next 4 weeks. You got to be kidding me. Like, I don't know if I even want to be here for this. I don't know if I'm going to come back because I didn't come to church to hear about my finances. Like, I stress all the time about my finances. I come to church not to stress out, to feel better. And I know what some of you are thinking. Like, I don't want to be stressed at church. I know what some of you are thinking. Some of you are thinking, you know what? I don't need to hear this. This isn't for me. I'm doing well financially. I have it all figured out. Some of you are probably even thinking, you know what, this is a bait and switch, right? This is the way the church is going to ask for more money, right? Some of you guys are probably thinking that. Some of you guys are thinking, you know what, I will never be where I need to be or where I want to be financially. I've tried everything, Steve, and I just can't get ahead. If you're thinking any of those, let me just say you're wrong. Like, I believe that what God wants to do in your heart and in my heart over the next 4 weeks will launch you into a direction that will literally change your life, change your children's lives, change the lives of others around you because of what God does over the next 4 weeks. And here's why I'm so confident about that. Here's why I believe so much about this and why Journey Church has never been shy about talking about money and finances is because it's because every one of us in this room, it's a struggle that we deal with, right? All of us in this room, we know what it's like to struggle with money and finances. Like some of us in this room, as I'm talking, we are drowning in debt and we're trying to survive financially and we're just not doing a good enough job with it. Some of us, we carry the weight and we know the weight every single day of providing financially for our family. We understand that. We get the stress that comes with this. Some of us, we're just trying to make wise financial decisions for our future. We're doing pretty well, but we have to make some tough decisions soon about how we're going to handle retirement or our kids' education. Some of us, our finances are causing conflicts and fights with our spouse, with our family. See, I don't know everyone in this room really, really well, but here's what I know about all of us. Money and finances is a big deal. It's huge. And I believe that the Bible, God's Word, is the greatest financial resource that is available to us in life. And I believe that if we will just listen, this series, when all is said and done, may be the most helpful, most practical series that we do all year long. And so I'm going to ask you to be here every week during this series over the next 4 weeks and lean into this series. Take it to heart. Over the next 4 weeks, each week, we're going to look at a mantra to live by in life. That if you are willing to embrace each of these mantras, it will bring you freedoms that you never thought were possible. And today we're going to start with the mantra of less is more. Say that with me. Less is more. Some of you guys aren't really excited about that. Say it one more time. Ready? 1, 2, 3. There we go. You're still not excited about that, but at least you said it louder. Less is more. Like if you're like me, I don't like saying that because I've been conditioned to believe that more is always better, right? Most of us in life, from a very early age, we've been taught that more is better. Like 1 is better than 2. $1 is, or $1 is good, but $2 is better. 1 car is good, 2 cars is better, right? 1 Krispy Kreme donut is good, 2 Krispy Kreme donuts is better, a whole lot better, right? We've all been taught that 1 might be good, but 2 is always better. We've bought into this myth that more is always better, but that's just a myth. It's just a myth. I remember in college there was this restaurant that we loved going to. And this restaurant, they sold 1 pound hamburgers. And with all the fixings, 1 pound. It was this huge hamburger. And every Tuesday night, it was buy one, get one free. And so every Tuesday night for a year, a bunch of us guys would go to this restaurant and we would all order a hamburger. We'd get half off basically because buy one, get one free. And we loved this place. Well, one Tuesday night, I felt a little greedy. And I said, guys, I'm really, really hungry. And I think I can eat 2 hamburgers. And they're like, no way, you cannot eat 2 full hamburgers. I mean, these are pound, when cooked. And I'm like, okay, here's the deal. If I can eat both hamburgers without throwing up, I get mine free. Everybody pays for my 2 hamburgers. And everybody's like, you're on. And so we go there and I get my 2 hamburgers with all the trimmings and fixings, cheese and bacon and lettuce and tomato and pickle, no onions, but everything else, lettuce, mayonnaise, ketchup, mustard, everything, right? 2 hamburgers, pound. huge hamburgers. And I eat the first one. I start to slow down at the end of the first one. And the guys are like, this is easy money for us, Steve. And so I'm like, I'm not done yet. And so I start to eat the second one. And all of a sudden, as I start to eat the second one, my stomach starts to do some weird things, if you know what I'm talking about. And I'm like, I'm still good. And so I convince myself I can do this. And I get about a third of the way through. And I feel this rumbling in my stomach, and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this any longer. And so I run to the restroom, and I'm in there for about 5 minutes. I throw up everything that I had eaten. And I come back to the table. There is 2/3 of this hamburger left. And one of my friends says, so are you ready to eat the rest of this? We know you threw up, but are you ready to eat the rest of it? If you eat the rest of it, we'll still give it to you free. And I'm like, no way, I'm not touching that thing. And I could not eat a hamburger for like 2 or 3 weeks. And what I discovered that day, and what I still remember to this day, is that 2 is not always better than 1. There's actually a verse in the Bible, I don't know if you know this or not, but there is a verse in the Bible that talks about this. It debunks the myth that more is always better. And I believe that if you will just internalize this verse and let this verse sink deep into your soul, you will be excited to actually live out the mantra, less is more. This verse is found in Ecclesiastes chapter 4. The book of Ecclesiastes was written by this guy named Solomon, a wise man who had all the money in the world, had all the resources. He had pursued more his entire life, and he got it because he was the most powerful, most resourceful, wealthiest man on the planet in his day. And this is what he writes in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 6. He says, better to have one handful with quietness. And that word quietness literally means tranquility or peace or calm. How many of us would love to have that in our lives? Just a little bit of peace, just a little bit of tranquility. What Solomon says is better to have one handful with quietness than 2 handfuls with hard work and chasing the wind. Better to have one handful with quietness than 2 handfuls with hard work and chasing the wind. Why does Solomon say this? Because if you have one hand in quietness and the other hand is empty, it gives you opportunities that you've never had before. When you have one handful, better is one handful in quietness. When someone needs a hand up, you have an extra hand to help them up. Better is one hand in quietness. When someone needs something, you have an extra hand to help give them something that could help them in life. Better is one handful in quietness. When someone needs comfort or your time just to listen to, you have an extra hand to help them, to encourage them, to build them up. Solomon says, better is one hand in quietness than 2 handfuls of hard work and chasing the wind. You see, what this does is it frees you up to live, it frees you up to respond as life goes on. Better is one hand in quietness. Essentially, what Solomon is saying is less is more. Less of what doesn't matter so that you can experience more of what does. Less is more. Which begs the question, what really matters in life? What really matters to me? How do I know what the one hand needs to be focused on? Several years ago, I met a woman named Becky. And 2 days before I met her, the doctor had told her and her family she was married and had 2 young kids under the age of 7. And the doctor had told her, there's nothing we can do for your cancer anymore. You have about 8 to 12 weeks to live. probably closer to 8 weeks than the 12 weeks. And I just met her 2 days after the doctor had said, you have such a short amount of time left here on planet Earth. Guaranteed. And I met with her to help her sort of figure out what was the next 8 to 12 weeks going to be like for her and her family. And she took out a paper. I'll never forget it. We were sitting at a table and she took out a piece of paper and a pen and began to write all the things she wanted to make sure that she did over the next 8 to 12 weeks. She wanted to make sure she was incredibly focused. And I'm telling you what, as she was writing down these things, you talk about clarity. She was forced to decide what was important and what was not. And anything that wasn't important to her did not make it on that list. And I wonder this morning, if you were given 3 months to live and you were to have a piece of paper to write out what you wanted to focus on, what you wanted to be about over the next 8 to 12 weeks, what would you put? My guess is you might put things like you spend time in your marriage, you spend time with your family, with your friends, with faith in God. You'd focus on those things. Here is what I'm pretty sure you would not write down. You would not write down, I want to make more money. You would not write down, I want to buy the new iPhone that I've been looking at, or the leather sofa, or the countertops. I want to replace those countertops that we've been saying we want to replace for years. Or that you want to increase the number of followers on Instagram account. Or you want to finally win at the game Fortnite. I mean, I think those are all things that we would never put down if we had 3 months to live. See, what you define as really important and what really matters, what you often find is that those are the things that you don't spend much time with. That you actually spend a lot more time pursuing things that really don't matter and that will never make that list. You're just chasing the wind. Why? Because we bought into the myth that more is better. When the truth is, less in your life means more living. Less in your life actually can mean more living. It's less of what's not really that important to you and more of what is. That's living your life. So I want to get really practical here this morning, because I think there's several ways where you and I, we can embrace and live out the less is more mantra in our life. The first thing is this, is we need to cut back. We need to cut back. Cut back on the things that don't really matter to us in life. Cut back on things you've been accumulating over the years but don't really need or doesn't make that big of an impact in your life. Cut back on spending money on things that aren't going to make a difference in your life. Maybe this is your Starbucks every day, or food, going out to eat, or clothes, or tech stuff and gadgets, or whatever it is. Cut back. You see, the key to life is cutting back when you can, not when you have to. I've learned this the hard way in my life several times. The most recent time was just a couple years ago. We were going through some lean years at Journey Church, and financially we just weren't meeting our needs, and which meant as a family, personally, we weren't meeting our needs financially. And we were having more bills come in than we had income come in. And by the grace of God, we were able to survive. But during that season, Amy Jo and I sat down and we had to cut back. We cut back on everything. Everything. And can I tell you, that was no fun? That was not fun. There were some things that we could cut back on and we say, okay, not a problem. But there were other things where we had to cut back on that I just hated to cut back on. I mean, I ate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for like months for lunch every day. And we cut back because we were forced to. And one of the things I discovered as God continued to bless us, and as we got out of that slump and those lean years at Journey, and God blessed us through that, what I learned is, we survived that. And we were actually able to live Like those things I thought I really needed for happiness and peace, I did away with those things because we had to, but I can do away with those things forever. See, the key is cutting back before you are forced to cut back. Jesus teaches on this very principle in Luke chapter 12, verse 15. Look at what he says. Jesus says in Luke chapter 12, verse 15, he says these words. He says, life is not measured by how much you own. Life is not measured by how much you own. And then to make sure that everyone understood what he was talking about, Jesus tells a story. Listen to this. He says, a rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. He said to himself, what should I do? I don't have room for all my crops. Then he said, I know, I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. Then I'll have room enough to store all my wheat and other goods. And I'll sit back and say to myself, my friend, you have enough stored away for years to come. Now take it easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, you will die this very night. Then who will get everything you worked for? See, Jesus at the beginning of this story says, life is not measured by how much you owe. Here's what Jesus wants us to understand this morning is your life, my life, does not consist of the abundance of stuff. And in our American culture, our consumer mentality, we've bought into this, that our life does consist. But Jesus says, no, your life does not consist of the abundance of stuff. The most meaningful things at the end of your life, the things that you can write on a piece of paper when the doctor tells you you have 3 months to live, will never be your stuff. And yet, we continue to accumulate more and more of it throughout our lives. And that's why I really want to encourage you this morning to begin to think about how you're going to cut back in life. In fact, I want you to be intentional with this over the next week. Sit down with your family, sit down with your spouse, and say, what are 3 areas? What are 3 areas that as a family we can cut back on? Not because we're forced to, but because we can. What are those things that you can cut back on in life? So cut back is the first thing. Clear out is the second thing. I mean, this is difficult for many of us in this room. And there's several reasons why. Some of us, it's because we grew up and we didn't have a whole lot. And so now today, when we do have and we can buy, we buy it. We don't want to waste anything. Everything's very precious to us because we've never had anything nice growing up. I get that. Like I grew up, and until I was about 30, I didn't have anything nice for most of my life because my family just didn't have money. And so the temptation is, if you're like me and you grew up that way, you don't want to waste anything. You want to conserve and you value everything. I get that. Maybe for some of us, it's the whole sentimental thing, right? You look at something in your house and you decide you're going to clear out and you're like, well, so-and-so gave me this. Remember this? This is before I got married. This is before I had kids. And this brings back so many great memories. Or maybe, you want me to throw away this? This is the last thing I have of them. This is my last memory of them. Some of us are so sentimental. And I don't claim to be sentimental. I'm just not. That's one of my flaws. I really could care less about that stuff. And my wife always gets mad at me. She says, like, you're not very sentimental. I'm not. But I get it. But still, at the end of the day, you have to remember your life, as Jesus says, does not consist in the abundance of stuff. You see, an abundance of stuff only complicates life. It doesn't lighten it. Doesn't bring you quietness, tranquility, peace, calm. It does the opposite. Like if you have Netflix and you've ever been between series, or you're looking for a movie to watch and you're trying to figure out what series to watch next or what movie to watch next, it can be frustrating, right? It can be stressful because you're going through all these things and you don't know which one to decide. How many of you guys have been to Cheesecake Factory? One of my favorite restaurants. The menu is like 100 pages long. Like, it's huge. And there's so many choices. And it's so stressful to look through all those choices to see what you're going to eat. You go to Five Guys, you know what you're going to get. You and I think we have way too many choices, way too many options in life. And we need to clear out, reduce our options. Clear out your closets, your garage, your storage unit. Reduce your options with clothes, what to wear, where to go. Reduce your calendar. Clear it out. Declutter your life. Now, I have to confess, I love decluttering. Like, it is one of the biggest joys I get in life is to declutter. And not everyone understands that. Some people would call it a disease or a sickness, but I love it. But here's what I've found as I declutter my life. There's less and less to complicate life. There's less and less things that I have to worry about and concern myself over. And what it does is ultimately it makes more room in my soul to focus on the things that really, really do matter. And Jesus says in Luke chapter 12, just a few verses down, he says this in Luke chapter 12, in verse 29, he says, "Don't be concerned about what to eat and what to drink. Don't worry about such things. These things dominate the thoughts of unbelievers all over the world. But your Father already knows your needs." You see, Jesus recognizes that the more you have in life, the more they begin to dominate your thoughts, the more they take up room in your heart and in your soul. And I think if Jesus were here today, he would say, listen, here's who I want you to be. And in order to be the spouse, the husband and wife that you really need to be, in order to be the mother or the father that you really need to be for your kids, in order to be the person that you need to be for your workers or for your boss, in order to be the person that would be honoring to God, to be the person that God really wants you to be, you need to clear some things out. You need to declutter your heart, declutter your soul, declutter your mind, because it will free you up to be the person that I want you to be. Huge. Clear it out. Simplify your life. And a side benefit of all of this is as you clear out, as you get rid of some things, you give it away. Well, wait a minute, Steve, I'm struggling financially, so I'm going to sell it away. That's not the point. You clear it away and you give it to other people who could use it, because now you have a hand that is empty. Better is one handful with quietness than a bunch of stuff with hard work and chasing the wind. Cut back, clear out, and then pay off. Pay off. I think we could all agree in this room that debt and financial stress is no fun. Right? I think we would all agree with that. Like, I've never heard anyone say to me, Steve, my debt helps me so much and gives me so much peace. Like, I am so thankful for all the high interest rates that my credit cards give me. I feel so close to God every time I see how much I owe to these credit cards with interest. My debt brings me so much joy, Steve. Like, I've never heard anyone say that. But here's what I've heard people say over and over and over again. You know what, Steve? My debt is killing me. The debt I've accrued, the debt we have, it's causing conflict in my marriage. We're just fighting all the time because of our debt. I'd give anything, Steve, to go back and not do the stuff that I did before, because now I'm in a place that I just feel so stressed out. I'm so deep in debt. And the Bible tells us then, in Proverbs chapter 22, verse 7, Solomon says these words. He says, the borrower is slave to the leader. or to the lender. The borrower is a slave to the lender. Now, next week, we're going to get a little bit more specific about how to deal with our debt and how to free ourselves from it. But for today, I just want us to think, I think we all agree that debt is no fun, no matter how you look at it. But I'll tell you what is fun: paying off debt. I mean, there is nothing more freeing in life than eliminating debt. You see, better is one handful of quietness than two handfuls of hard work and chasing the wind. Better is a car that is paid off than a new car with a bigger payment that adds more stress to your life. Better is a smaller house than fighting over the payments of a big one. Better is having financial margin and being able to help others who are in need than living paycheck to paycheck. Now, I'm not suggesting that we don't buy stuff or that we don't take out loans. I'm not suggesting that you can't have nice stuff. In fact, I would argue that having some nice stuff is better than having a bunch of junk that owns you. Having nice stuff that you own is better than having a bunch of junk that owns you. It's better to have something you love, something you use, something you enjoy, something that really matters in life, instead of a bunch of stuff that clutters your life and that you become a slave to. See, the richest people in the world are not those who have the most, but those who need the least. Let me say that again. The richest people in the world are not those who have the most, but those who need the least. I mean, you go to a developing country and you spend 4 or 5 days there and you will realize how true that is. The richest people in the world are not those who have the most, but those who need the least. Less is more. Listen, you have one chance to get this right. Your life is incredibly, ridiculously short. And before you know it, your kids will be grown up and gone. Before you know it, your life will be coming to an end. And you will wonder, how did I spend my life? Listen, your life will pass. And your life is too valuable. Your calling of God is too great. Your God is too good to waste your life on meaningless things that really don't matter. Better is one handful, some really good friendships, than the pursuit of things and no spiritual community. Better is one handful and some experiences and some family vacations and some date nights with your spouse than 2 handfuls of busyness. Better is one handful and a strong marriage than an accumulation of stuff and no intimacy. Better is one handful and the ability to make a difference in someone else's life than 2 handfuls and being consumed with yourself. Solomon says, better is one handful in quietness with peace and tranquility than 2 handfuls of hard work and chasing the wind. Now that's how you make change. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, God, I pray that today is starting to make sense to us. God, I pray that maybe some of us, we've heard these words before and we've dismissed it for whatever reason. God, I pray that today that we would begin to take this to heart, and that on our journey to financial freedom, that you would allow us to see that this myth that we've all bought into, that more is better, God, we know that your word teaches something totally different. God, I pray that you would move in our hearts right now, that we would be convicted, that we would be challenged where our focus is, where we are spending our time, where we are chasing the wind. Those things, many of them, they just don't matter in the big picture. God, I pray that you would help us to focus on what really does matter and have more of that in our lives. God, we love you for bringing us truth that sometimes convicts us and challenges us and encourages us all at the same time. God, may what we've heard today, may it truly impact us. May it change us. So as we leave here today, we do things differently. God, we thank you for your son, Jesus Christ, who without his sacrifice on the cross would not make it possible for us to be here today. Use this time today to help us reflect on our own lives and what we need to do to make some changes. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.